and welcome to another episode of NewsReal with Joe and Neil.
I'm Joe.
I'm Neil. Today's Sunday, March 3rd, 2019, which means that, can you believe it, next year is another U.S. presidential election.
Didn't we just have one with the whole Russia thing and all that? Or was that a while ago?
Well, 2016 never ended. It certainly hasn't ended for the Democrats and the Never-Trumpers. They're still stuck in 2016.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it is weird, though, isn't it, that it's like it is next year? I know, really, it's a full good 18 months.
2 years, really.
But people have started. People have announced they're running as candidates for either party. And in a way, I think, as we'll get into now, I think Trump kind of spoke to the base again. He kind of relaunched himself. He never really stopped. But he spoke last week. It was at the Conservative Political Action Committee is a conference, I'm not sure. It's an annual event. Now so it wasn't, put on just for him. This conference, organized by the American Conservative Union, has been going for ages. But I think it's his first speech at it. It was also Trump's longest speech. It ran for over 2 hours. He didn't give anything like that long, even during his mega rallies when he was campaigning last time. So 2 hours plus. It's funny. It's pretty funny. It's obviously he's speaking to the base. The crowd love him. He brings out a lot of the old favorites. We know from the book that was written by Woodward, meant to tarnish him, but it also was pretty objective, I found when I read it, that his staffers, some who are actually trying to derail him and others who like him and trying to help him, but they're all unanimous in agreeing that they're trying to get him to stay on script. Whatever you want to say, sir, fine, but just stick roughly to what we agree and prepare beforehand. But he keeps going off script, right? He's got to have it.
Well, he explicitly said that the reason he was elected was because he goes off script.
Yeah, I think we might even hear that. We want to show some highlights from it. He's a loose cannon, but that's when he's best, and that's when he's. But
it's obviously true that politicians to go off script. The thing, I mean, he's absolutely true, and it's funny. You'll see in the video where he says, I keep going off script, and but that's why we won, or I won, whatever, last time, because I went off script. People love it when I go off script, and we have to go off script basically. Otherwise, we're not gonna get there. We got to go off script, and it's true that I think many people in the West and today, in particular, maybe around the world, would be much more look much more favorably, let's say, on politicians if they were to go off script. And what going off script simply means that they talk turkey, basically. They say what they just talk like a normal person would,
What they really think, what's really up.
Yeah, and that they relate to ordinary people, basically, and talk not from a prepared script that's designed to hit all the right notes type of thing that people hear over and over again, basically platitudes, without any real substance to them or anything that relates directly to what people are talking about. So it's obviously very attractive for the average voter to hear a politician or politician or president of a country or prime minister, whatever, talk in the same way, more or less, about the same things in the same way as they talk to their friends about. It really establishes a real connection directly to the people.
Right.
And that's not the way Western politics has been done for a very long time.
It certainly isn't presidential.
No, but
we might even hear him cuss. Will we give it a listen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's play this, Scotty. I think that's it.
Let us know on Sunday night. I got to be very careful when I talk about this. But it was the great tariff debate of 1888. And the debate was, we didn't know what to do with all the money we were making. We were so rich. And McKinley, prior to being president, he was very strong on protecting our assets, protecting our country. And he made statements that others cannot come into our country and steal our wealth and steal our jobs and build their country and not defend our country. We can't do that. We can't ever allow that to happen.
Scott, can you pause it for a sec? I'm not sure what he's referring to, But McKinley, I do know, was killed. And he was assassinated, but not quite in office. He was removed from office. No, I think he was assassinated in office, and replaced then with another Republican, Theodore Roosevelt. Trump certainly knows his history, but I'd like to know what was the debate he's talking about then.
Just about economics and isolationism.
It's
basically.
interesting that at the very least he ties it to that time, because there is a lot going on today. That's the turn of the century, the struggles in the United States. Immigration was a major issue.
1844, he said, did he? Or 48?
I think he said 1880,
80, well,
but it might even be later. I think McKinley was president just in the late 1890s, just at the turn of the century. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that. Let's carry on.
And I don't know, maybe you know, I'm totally off script, right? Thank you, darling. I'm totally off script right now. And this is how I got elected, by being off script. And if we don't go off script, our country's in big trouble, folks, because we have to get it back. And when I look at what's happening on the other side, I encourage it. I say, no, I think the new Green Deal, or whatever the hell they call it, the Green New Deal, right? Green New Deal. I encourage it. I think it's really something that they should promote. They should work hard on. It's something our country needs desperately. They have to go out and get it. But I'll take the other side of that argument only because I'm mandated to. But they should stay with that argument. Never change. Never change. No planes. No energy. When the wind stops blowing, that's the end of your electric. Let's hurry up. Darling? Darling, is the wind blowing today? I'd like to watch television, darling.
He's like, bring it on to the Democrats and their Green New Deal, because he's pretty confident that most Americans will just absolutely trash it.
We're already laughing at it.
100% renewable energy in 10 years. Massive infrastructure redevelopment, the target being 10 years. That's just the hard, like the actual physical changes that would take place in the country. Say nothing of like basically 100% guaranteed employment for anyone who wants it and anyone who's unwilling to work. And you can't, this is like a red rag, right, to the conservative America, to most people in America. I think he's probably right, and he's encouraging to bring it on. Totally go down that route. You've just handed me the 2020 election. He thinks
it's fundamentally anti-American. The Green New Deal, unfortunately, So I'm not sure how anyone expects that Americans in general are going to vote for it, like are gonna think it's a good idea, and it's not going to do more damage to the Democratic Party and the people that are promoting it than any benefit they might. They obviously thought that it was a good piece of a proposal to introduce, that it would it would get some at least support from their base, and would encourage people to think positively of that idea of a green economy. Mm-hmm. But like I said, it's fundamentally anti-American, so it's not going to fly.
Yeah,
And I mean, when I say fundamentally anti-American, I mean that significant majority of Americans will think it's a bad idea because they're Americans, basically, and because of the way Americans see themselves, see their country, and see the world, and see life, see life, basically.
And he played to that there, where it's like the government's coming in here mandating that I travel a certain way. I don't think they actually say that, but that's the take home. That's what they hear when they say they want to build all these other things to encourage, where possible, alternative means of transport. It's like, hang on a second.
Well,
I'll choose.
Yeah. I think
how I travel.
The fear people see, that there's a fear or the rejection that there is to it from I think a majority of people who know about it, let's say, is because the premise of it is it's not just about improving infrastructure and changing the economy because it will improve, it'll create jobs or it'll be better for the economy and stuff. That's not really. They're just kind of added bonuses in a certain sense. The reason people are afraid of it or don't like it is because the premise of it is that we have to save the world from
the planet
from climate change, basically. Right. That's why you need to green the economy effectively.
It's like Macron's message,
right? To save the planet, and the reason people see a danger in that is that it assumes a kind of a humanitarian moral high ground that then would give them leverage to
justify anything.
Well, to enforce it, basically.
Yeah.
That this is the moral right, and that because who doesn't want to save the planet, right? The planet's in danger. Ocasio-Cortez herself said that the planet would no longer exist in 12 years' time. So it's an existential crisis for every single human being on the planet. Most specifically Americans, obviously, in this case. And how could anybody not agree with it? What are you? Do you hate the planet? Do you hate life? How can you not agree with this?
Yeah.
So then people feel that they will, with that as the premise or the foundation of the proposal, that people will be forced to comply with it. They'll be forced to, and obviously it implies a significant expansion of government influence into the lives of ordinary people. Where, like, basically your house has to be refitted out to be in compliance with green energy standards. You have to drive an electric car if you drive at all. If you can't afford an electric car, which are quite expensive, at least now and for the foreseeable future, or in the short term, then you have to take a train, and it'll be an electric train, a green train, basically. And private transport with gas-powered cars will be technically outlawed, and these people feel that they have the moral right to force people to do that because save the planet.
Yeah.
Not only save the planet, but they throw into the document claims that that climate change is exacerbating already systemic racism and discrimination against minorities. So there's another heavy dose of moralizing there, as well, which is a bizarre thing to say. I'm sure you can probably provide statistics that maybe back it up, but to say that climate change increases racism and discrimination against minorities, it's a bizarre thing to say or to use as your argument for revamping the economy. I mean, it's really given the bad press that identity politics essentially has received in the past few years from a lot of people, and I don't think there's many people who really think that identity politics in the way that it's being presented or has been presented over the past couple of years is really a sensible or rational thing. I think most people still retain the ability to see that it's a bit crazy, basically. So for these people then to put identity politics into a document that talks about revamping, overhauling the economy is just like, wow.
I know. Social policy, environment plus economy. They were going big vision. But what I find wild about this is that there's there are some, because it's not across the board Democrats supporting this, but there's sufficient support, and certainly media support. I mean, they'll show you that Google searches about the Green New Deal and the extensive discussion in the States about it is way up. Oh yeah, it's all over the media. What I find wild is that they're going with this it's kind of like a doubling down on all the things that Trump / his conservative base, in quotes, doesn't like, we're going to double down on that and bet big. Because this is obviously timed and done now. Ocasio-Cortez is young. She could have been just told whatever for years and never maybe even given that platform. But they've clearly gone ahead with it. This is basically, and that's why Trump loves it, the Democrats' vision. They don't realistically think that they're actually going to get this law passed at all. But they're saying this is more or less our mandate for 2020. Support us in 2020. It's wild because surely any common sense among them, they would have tried to re-strategize and try to meet the conservative majority halfway, done something to pull them out and back to supporting someone Democrat.
Yeah.
You would think that their next incarnation of a candidate, the preferred one, and or the vision they represent, would be something
libertarian or
something
libertarian,
like grassroots American, yada yada. No,
apparently not.
They've gone full globalist retard on this.
Right.
Never go full globalist retard, especially the year before an election in the United States of America. That's just crazy talk. There's only one candidate I can think of who's a reasonable option in that she gives a lip service to the social justice ideology, but she was also criticized because actually in the past she has a track record of being basically naturally socially conservative like most Americans. That's Tulsi Gabbard. On anti-war issues, she would easily appeal to both left and right in America. On loving her country, on being a military, vet and all that, she's definitely ticks all the boxes for someone who would be an awesome Democrat, yet appealing compromise to pull back some of those voters from Trump. But no, what are they doing to her? They're like shunning her. They're doing the Ron Paul on her. She's got almost no platform. It'll be lucky. She'll be fortunate if she is in the debates for the Democratic primaries. She almost certainly won't make the Democratic primaries because we know what happened to Bernie Sanders last time. They're already tarnishing as a Russian stooge. They've raked her over the coals just for basically saying the United States shouldn't be in Syria. Again, she climbed down on Assad, but I mean, she's tarnished from the get-go because she actually went there and met Assad. But it's wild because they shoot themselves in both feet and the head and everything. They're dead on arrival. They're basically gifting Trump 2020.
Right.
He just has to live from here till then.
Right. But in that context, though, obviously, like we said at the beginning of the show, that the whole RussiaGate thing hasn't gone away. It's continued on since Trump's election. So that's why it seems like we're a bit shocked that there's more elections and another presidential election next year. It's so soon. But it's because we really haven't gone through 2 full years since Trump was elected, more than 2 years since Trump was elected. It's really just been one long, protracted period of time under which Trump has been repeatedly, demonized as a Russian agent, and the Mueller investigation is just, it's done a weird thing with the time frame of it there.
Not my president. For them, it's still November 8th, 2016.
Right.
You're not my president. I don't recognize the results.
Right.
Can we get someone to come and check this, please?
Yeah.
It hasn't turned... It's Groundhog Day for them.
Right.
It's still November 8th.
And what's interesting is all of the media is still on that as well. You know what I mean? Well, that's why we get that impression that it hasn't changed. It hasn't. Nothing's changed since Trump was elected in terms of what the media is, the message the media has been putting out, and what their main focus is. Because, well, I suppose it was reignited, although it didn't die out really, like we're saying, but it was it sparked up again just this week with Trump's former lawyer, Cohen, who gave testimony to just to Congress, no?
He gave to 3 committees, only one of which was public.
Right. On dish the dirt on Trump. Yeah. And that's pretty much what it is, and it's in the context of the Mueller so-called investigation, which just really has gone nowhere, hasn't produced anything of any substance about Trump, about the initial allegations made against Trump. The Mueller investigation has produced pretty much nothing, despite the fact that the media has repeatedly and continues to repeatedly try and make it seem like it's about to break some major scandal about Trump that will impeach him or put an end to him. The walls are closing in. There was that video we played a few times of for basically since Trump was elected, the media has repeatedly used this catchphrase of the walls closing in and bombshells going to drop and stuff over the past 2 years since he was elected.
Trump
repeatedly, over and over again.
Finished.
Any minute now, he's finished. He's gone. Bombshell. The walls are closing in. This really feels like impeachment. Yes, yes, yes. Month after month after month, there's a guy put together a YouTube video of those news reports on that, and they keep doing it, you know. In response to, I mean, there's a few things. I suppose not surprising, but it's from the Guardian. The UK Guardian is on this, and there's a couple of articles just from yesterday on the Cohen testimony. One of them, you can put one of them up there, Scotty. Any one will do. Yeah, that'll do. If Trump loses, we know what to expect. Anger, fear and disruption is the headline from an opinion piece in The Guardian, which is basically what The Guardian thinks. All of The Guardian thinks. So what he's saying, basically, while upping the defamation or the demonization of Trump as a liar and a crook and a Russia stooge and all this kind of stuff, they're now, because, like we said, we're getting close to, well, next year's the elections, they're starting to put out there the idea of Trump. They're literally claiming that Trump will, in some way or other, refuse to lose.
Right.
That it's like the worst case scenario is that Trump will win again next year, and then that'll be totalitarianism. As soon as he wins, if he wins, it'll be totalitarianism. But in that article, for example, some of the text that refers to Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, testimony, and the text goes, among the most chilling words uttered this week by Michael Cohen, this is Trump's lawyer, is that, this is a quote from the guy, given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power. And this is why I agreed to appear before you today. I mean, so this guy's using these terms, like he's playing obviously into, he's saying what he's expected to say. He's a turncoat, right? He's a liar and a
lawyer.
And a lawyer and a thoroughly scurrilous human being, basically. And he's just he's saying whatever, you know. And in another example, if you just put up the other article, Scotty, the other Observer or Guardian article, it's the Observer view again. There's an editorial by the staff, basically, of the Observer. Even Donald Trump base must doubt him now. Well, that's obviously wishful thinking, like, because they obviously don't. And the text that's interesting from that is it's just somewhere down in the text, but I have it here. When Cohen, admittedly a convicted perjurer, spoke of Trump's innate racism, habitual mendacity, and potential criminality, it carried the unmistakable sting of truth. So this is coming from The Guardian, right? And it's coming from most of the media, basically saying similar things. But if you just look at that one sentence, Cohen, admittedly a convicted perjurer, admittedly a convicted liar, said something, it carried the unmistakable sting of truth. Why would you assume that someone who you say yourself is a known liar, when he says something, that it carries the unmistakable sting of truth? No, it doesn't. By definition, it is highly likely that he's lying, because he's a liar, and you've just said he's a liar. But this is the level of delusion that these people get into, and wishful thinking in terms of their desire to double down on the Trump. Yeah. And the other thing that bugs me about it is that on the same website, the Guardian website, you know, you have statements like that. These obviously blinkered, ideologically driven, totally biased, absolutely 100% biased, in no way impartial or objective journalism at all. Alongside it, you have advertisements for the Guardian saying, this is the Guardian's model for open, independent journalism. Our mission is to keep independent journalism accessible to everyone. And down the bottom of almost every article, they have, as the Mueller if you go down to the very bottom there, right down to the bottom of one of those articles, there, right there, as the Mueller investigation unfolds, ... is a headline at the bottom of the text of the article. There's a little blurb from The Guardian. The Guardian offers clarity at this critical moment in American history. As the most momentous political probe since Watergate plays out, we will continue to provide insight, analysis, and factual reporting to help bring the truth to light. And This is the bottom of an article where the guy's saying, yeah, this liar Cohen who's saying bad things about Trump, he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
Even though I admit he's a liar, but here, because he's saying bad stuff about Trump that has been said repeatedly for the past 2.5 years, it's the truth, obviously. And this is us providing you insight analysis and factual reporting to help bring the truth to light. I mean, and people wonder why people don't believe the media anymore. I mean, it's obviously biased, and they're presenting this as objective analysis, factual objective analysis, when it's obviously massively biased. Mm-hmm. But they don't seem to even be able to see that themselves. How transparent their bias actually is.
Right.
And then they juxtapose it with claims of being truthful and factual and objective.
This messaging, obviously that one was tailored for this story and for that article, but that basic blurb has appeared under The Guardian.
It's on a bunch of any articles that refer to Trump.
It pops up even when you just go to the homepage, guardian.co.uk. I'm pretty certain it first appeared the morning after Trump was elected. Yeah. Something broke that day whereby the liberal paper in London sort of intuited the situation, but the writing is on the wall for us, even though that's an election over there in the United States. It has reverberations for our hold, I suppose, on people's minds, if it's a war for people's minds. Mm-hmm. They just knew the writing was on the wall, and they started popping up, basically, we really need your help, send us your money, given what's going on, look at all the fake news we're having to battle on your behalf, blah, blah, blah. Mm. And yeah, so they're campaigning as well. It's weird how the British newspapers full frontal campaigning in the US election. I want to say that it's actually more pernicious than that. Cohen is a liar, and he did commit perjury. But here's the actual: he's going to prison for 2 months because he lied to the FBI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go.
Well, what was it? He lied about exactly when the Trump Tower Moscow idea. Trump wanted to build a tower in Moscow, and he was thinking about it as late as 2015, i.e. when the campaigning had started, and he was having Mike Cohen call someone up. He tried to get to call someone in the Kremlin. That's Trump in his kind of naive sort of American business way. Call someone at the Kremlin, see if we can't get a deal going for my personal business reasons. I want a Trump Tower in Moscow. I've got them in other cities. Why not Moscow? Mm-hmm. And those discussions did take place then. The Russian government has since said, as we told Michael Cohen at the time, you're asking the wrong people. But if you want to contact the Moscow city authorities, go ahead. But that's not the way that Trump wanted to do it. He wanted to pull some strings,
right? Which is the way he usually is used to doing things. And that's the way business works in Washington.
That's how you do business anywhere, really, I suppose. Right. I don't know if the Russians were being fully... Anyway, that was their story. But the lie is... So there was a kind of a freak out in the Trump White House because it would have looked bad if... So they did, I think, try to backdate when these conversations or email or inquiries were made about a potential Trump Tower in Moscow. So yes, on a technicality, he was lying. But he was caught in a lie because of the lie that Trump is a stooge of Moscow. Therefore, any kind of contacts he has with the Russian government are evil. So that was the mistake. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to the way Flynn got raked over the coals for lying to the FBI and committing perjury. Right. When he had a freak out because he goes, oh my God, they're onto me now, and I better deny that I spoke with the ambassador, even though it's common practice and it's perfectly fine and normal. But he went defensive and went, oh shit, I haven't infringed anything actually, but I've infringed an ideological set of rules that are unspoken in our country, and I don't want to be caught, so I will lie. But there was no need. They were white lies to cover something that wasn't necessary to do in terms of the actual law and writ of the United States and how it should function.
But it's not about that. It's about the way it looks.
Everything's ideological stuff.
Everything's about the optics and how things can be spun to make you look bad, even though you did nothing wrong.
The other thing he's going to jail for, it's doubly weird because as one of the congressmen, either Meadows or one of the other guys, was querying Cohen in Congress last week, he said, this has got to be a first. We've got a guy up here who's testifying as to the character of the sitting United States president who has been done for perjury, and he's about shortly, I believe, going to go to jail for 2 months. And what's he doing up here, testifying as to the character of someone else? If it is indeed true that he broke the law,
what he's doing up there is trying to provide the only kind of evidence that the Mueller investigation, which the Guardian articles repeat that, any day now Mueller is going to release his report. So this guy's up there trying to lend his support to providing the only kind of evidence that the Mueller investigation will actually ever produce, which is none at all except hearsay and defamation and insinuation and implications, basically, without any factual evidence. That's the entirety of the Trump RussiaGate allegations have all been insinuation without any substance whatsoever. I mean, the thing what Cohen is doing up there is saying exactly what I read earlier on. He's up there in the understanding that has been given to him explicitly that he will get he's getting a short jail term because he is saying the following: given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power. I.e., Trump is a dictator in waiting and wants to be emperor of America for life. And he is going to institute or install totalitarianism and dictatorship into America within the next 2 years. That is what he is there to say. And told to say that explicitly.
What came first, that or the media messaging like we saw in The Guardian? Or were they simultaneous? Because the messaging maybe came from the same place. Maybe The Guardian took the lead from Cohen's testimony.
Well, they've been saying that, but they've been saying that about
a variation of it
since he's been in office, that he's going to be a dictator. This is the end of freedom in America, the end of democracy. Trump wants to be a dictator. Just pulling this stuff out of thin air with no evidence whatsoever, based on what your character assessment of the shape of his face or the look of his, the color of his hair, the color of his skin. Because he's orange man, he's going to be a dictator. That's the argumentation. It's just beyond inane at this point. And to think that you have to actually read that kind of stuff from supposedly reputable, journalists and media outlets and take them seriously, it's just bizarre. It just blows my mind.
The other thing that Cohen is to spend 2 months in prison for is tax evasion. Specifically concerning bungs or bribes he accepted from foreign companies and foreign governments, including Kazakhstan and other places.
Him and all the rest of them.
Exactly. He would get basically cash for access to Trump while he was campaigning, because they're like, who is this guy? Looks like he's going to be a winner. Can you get us an in with him? Maybe a meeting or just a question or something.
A donation
because that's how it's always done.
Right.
And he is now being... The law, as it should have been applied all these last 100 years, is being applied to him retrospectively, but not because he's actually considered to have done anything wrong morally, although legally he did, but because he committed, I suppose, ideological infringements. Namely, he was Trump's lawyer, and they're using him, they're squeezing him hard.
Well, because he has information as Trump's lawyer.
Doesn't that say so much about America? Like that even though he's complying and giving them what they want, the dirt or the insinuation of dirt on Trump, he's still going to spend 2 months.
2 months in some minimum security prison.
I know, but
like a holiday home.
Your reputation is kind of shot after that. Like,
no, he's going to be. He'll get the perks for being a good, basically, a good turncoat. A turning state's witness. Basically, I mean, he'll have no problem. I'd say he's totally happy to do that.
He was specifically asked about the RussiaGate angle. He, like all the others, he said Wednesday that he has no evidence suggesting his former boss colluded with Russia.
Right.
But that he has his suspicions.
Right, of course, he can have suspicions. That's the whole point. It's insinuation and basically just, dirt digging, but without any actual dirt, but making insinuations about Trump. And that's all it's been since he was elected.
There's more.
The thing is, the value of him as Trump's lawyer is not that he actually has any information that he can divulge about any criminality on the part of Trump or RussiaGate or whatever, but simply the fact that he is known to be, he was Trump's confidant / lawyer, that anything he says and can be paid to say will have, as the guy in The Guardian said, the ring or the sting of truth to it, because, well, you would assume that because he was close to Trump, anything he says can plausibly be true. So his value is in the fact that he was objectively Trump's lawyer and confidant for a period of time, and therefore he can say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And he'll say whatever they want him to say for the right kickbacks.
Yeah. But like everyone else who's been hauled up before committees or the Mueller investigation or the FBI, when it actually comes to it, they don't commit, at least publicly, the perjury of saying, definitely, there is this link between Trump and Russia. They always back down. But it's a sick game because they know that, but they're up there to impugn things. Cohen also said, there are so many dots that all seem to lead. That's careful lawyer speak in the direction of collusion between the Kremlin and the Trump campaign. As I stated in my earlier testimony, I wouldn't use the word colluding. Was there something odd about the back and forth? Now, when you say back and forth, the next word would be, back and forth communication maybe between the Kremlin and the Trump administration. No, the word he uses is praise. The back and forth praise with President Putin. Because
But
things were said by one of them off the cuff by each president.
Right. His personal opinion. His personal opinion that is the same opinion that lots of other people have based on publicly available information, that when two people exchange a couple of compliments, that therefore there's probably something going on there. That's the height of it. That's what taxpayers' money is being wasted on with these hearings. To have this idiot up there to insinuate things on the basis that I was Trump's right-hand man and here's what I think happened. I'm not going to tell you anything factually happened because I don't have anything to tell you factually that happened. But I'll certainly say that things seemed strange to me when Trump shook Putin's hand. There seemed to be a moment of lingering and a look that conveyed some kind of and I don't know what.
I'm no expert, but it looked like a Freemasonic handshake to me.
There may have been a tickle of the palm involved there. And in my capacity as Trump's confidant, I can say this. But I'd hasten to add, I have no evidence that any wrongdoing occurred. Really? That's it? So it's all just, it's like a soap opera. It's just crazy. Made up bullshit drama.
You said it's a waste of taxpayers' money. I wonder, though, if they think of it like worthwhile anyway, because maybe after 4 years of constant insinuation, it will have an impact in the next election.
Who?
Maybe. Well, spending all the money on investigations and so on.
You mean the deep state anti-Trumpers?
Deep state.
Well, of course, they absolutely are happy to waste taxpayers' money. It doesn't mean that it's not a waste of taxpayers' money.
Well, it is, but maybe they're thinking from their perspective, it's not a waste, that it might pay off in 2020.
I don't think so. Because, well, I mean, as the Guardian guy, I mean, here's what the Guardian said about Robert Mueller, the special counsel investigating Trump campaign's activities in the 2006 election, will present his findings soon. Mueller is expected to focus on possible connections to Russian disinformation. That's already off the table. Russian disinformation and electoral subversion operations. No, already been dealt with, and there was nothing. There was like a handful of Facebook ads that may have come from Russian operatives. That's what subverted the election. Yeah, right, sure. So that's dead in the water. The WikiLeaks disclosure of Hillary Clinton's campaign emails. What's that got to do with Trump? Absolutely nothing. And WikiLeaks exposed them, yes, or WikiLeaks disclosed them, but who gave them to WikiLeaks is apparently unknown still, although there's obvious plausible.
It's pretty certain now, due to forensic analysis pulled up by Binney and other former NSA people, that it was pulled from the computer using a USB or some other. It was it wasn't the internet wasn't used, so it had to be someone who went into the building of the DNC. Right.
Someone who hated Hillary Clinton and who worked for Hillary Clinton and didn't like her and wanted to screw her over. So again, absolutely nothing to do. And there'll be, since that is the truth of the matter, there will be nothing that links Trump in any way to the disclosure of those Hillary Clinton emails. That's the second point. So two duds so far. Alleged conflicts of interest and any obstruction of justice arising from Trump's 2017 sacking of FBI Director James Comey. Obstruction of justice?
He's allowed to do that.
But there was no obstruction of justice because as soon as when Trump fired James Comey, who was and is a liar and part of the deep state and part of the entire sexed up, dodgy dossier, RussiaGate, all of that nonsense, Trump fired him because he was directly involved in that. And if there was any obstruction of justice, they would have found it immediately after Comey was fired, because the firing of Comey was this supposedly massive red flag that showed that Trump was up to something. He was trying to hide something. So they spent the last year and a half trying to investigate, and they found nothing.
Yeah.
And then the only conclusion, therefore, is that Comey was fired because he was a liar and making shit up again about Trump. And that's why Trump fired him. So what are you going to do? You're going to condemn or denounce or impeach Trump for getting rid of someone who is lying about him? Is that an offence? Is that an impeachable offence? When you remove someone who is clearly lying about you and spreading false information about the president? I don't think so. So there's nothing. So the bottom line is, this long-awaited Robert Mueller investigation, the release of his findings will come to absolutely nothing.
Right. They've already released findings.
And yet they've
already said there's no conclusions.
Yeah. And yet they write these long articles building up to the moment that Mueller is going to release a big nothing burger. Because Trump's going to be a dictator if we don't do something about him in 2020. So how are we going to do something about him? Let's propose a Green New Deal that every American, almost to a man and a woman, will hate.
It's bizarre.
Really?
They've lost the plot. They've diverged further, and that's I think that's what speaks to the kind of the craziness of it. That there's almost no intelligence. We've lost intelligence, as Team America said. There's no one in the high office, like in Democrats or even the permanent, bureaucracy, going, let's win this back. Let's come up with a reasonable plan and win this back.
You know why there's no one there and why it's failing is because as Trump continues in his presidency, more and more people are getting used to it and realizing that actually there's nothing really to be so worked up about here.
Right. Where's the fascism?
He's just another president. And even if he wins 2 terms, big deal.
Right.
I mean, really, that's the core question that people keep forgetting. It's almost like people have assumed that it's self-evident that there's something horribly, horribly wrong with the Trump presidency. But to date, no one has been able to provide any information or any data to substantiate that dire kind of view of the Trump presidency. Why? Why is he so horrible and terrible? Sure, he's not presidential. You don't like the way he talks. He tweets. He's a bit rude, and he goes off script. He's an orange man, that kind of stuff. That's why this NPC kind of meme, of Orange Man Bad is very popular and is very funny to many people, because they all know that it really is very close to the truth of the matter, is that these people are just, I don't like him just because.
And then they're downloading instructions and repeating them.
Right. But I don't like him just because. Obviously, even for the people the anti-Trumpers, they know that that's not a valid argument, right? Why don't you like him? Just because he's Orange Man and he's bad. So then they have to flesh out their emotional, distaste for Trump with supposedly factual narratives about that prove that he's as bad as they feel he is. So they feel that he's a bad person, basically, based on the way he looks and the way he talks.
Yeah,
they feel that he provokes in them a negative emotion, not for anything he's doing or has done, but simply the way he looks and the way he talks. So, in order to flesh out that bad feeling, give it some reality, they spend a lot of time making things up. Making up what they claim are factual, serious, high crimes and misdemeanors and that they project onto Trump. But then the problem is that when people look into those, and when you have to go through the kind of serious judicial process or investigative process to actually look at those allegations, they all fall flat.
Right.
So it rises
Trump
up.
Just needs he needs one platform, and to say literally, I don't think you'll ever see one of them cuss like that, to literally say it's all bullshit. Mm-hmm. Everyone agrees, or most people agree, and that's it. That's all he needs to say.
Mm-hmm. Do we have Cohen?
We've got Cohen giving
Put him up
his
there.
opening statement.
Just a quick one.
Let's listen to Mike Cohen. This is his prepared statement, I think, before they actually started interviewing him.
Time?
You can do it now.
Thank you. So first I want to thank you, Chairman, because I appreciate the opportunity to share some final thoughts. I have acknowledged I have made my own mistakes, and I have owned up to them publicly and under oath. But silence and complicity in the face of the daily destruction of our basic norms and civility to one another will not be one of them. I did things and I acted improperly, at times at Mr. Trump's behest. I blindly followed his demands. My loyalty to Mr. Trump has cost me everything. My family's happiness, friendships, my law license, my company, my livelihood, my honor, my reputation, and soon my freedom. And I will not sit back, say nothing, and allow him to do the same to the country. Indeed, given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power. And this is why I agreed to appear before you today. In closing, I'd like to say directly to the President, we honor our veterans even in the rain. You tell the truth even when it doesn't aggrandize you. You respect the law and our incredible law enforcement agents. You don't villainize them.
Blah, blah, blah,
You
blah,
don't
blah.
disparage generals, Gold Star families,
My God.
prisoners of
It's
war.
like...
Bringing up all the old tropes, basically.
Basically. You notice that it's so vague. It's like all the uncivility we've seen in the country the last few years. It's his fault.
Right.
And he alludes to a cult of personality, but now I've seen the light. I was under his spell.
Yeah.
I'm free. I'm so sorry. Mea culpa, mea culpa. I won't tell you any specific things because there are none, but I will agree with the party line. It's bizarre how the U.S. works. There's this hidden, I wouldn't say hidden. I mean, we talk about the deep state and who is actual personnel and structures and how it works, but it's more like an unspoken ideology of silence. He's speaking to a party line from, I suppose, an imaginary party that doesn't actually exist in a concrete reality. But it stokes the fear of God in a lot of people. It's gotten to him big time, as if it's as real as anything concrete, you know.
Well, but he could be lying. He's a lawyer.
Or he may not actually feel any, there may not be any of his personal investment or sincerity in what the statement, the words he's just said, of course.
He doesn't believe any of it.
Right.
But
he's compelled to say it. He's compelled to be on record in Congress.
Right.
This is what I believe.
Because that's the deal.
Yeah.
He was given. He was he was told this is what you need to say. You understand this is the kind of tone you need to take. Because the point of all this is to demonize Trump.
Yeah.
So get out there and do it. And we'll make sure you're looked after.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is. There's no reason not to think that is how bad it is.
Yeah. And for Americans, like, just think like of the potential for that kind of thing to become concrete, to move more and more from the abstract into the concrete. What you can and cannot say. I mean, they already get a taste of it in the pushback on social media and Twitter. They simply get banned or something, or demonetized or whatever. But now, if you're slightly higher up the food chain, you're the lawyer of a former lawyer of a president, and you're not on board with the party line, in quotes, point taken, he's going to be treated lightly. But nevertheless, he is officially going down for 2 months. That's a big kind of, it's totalitarian stick to hold over people.
Right.
For the country of the First Amendment, free speech, the right to petition your government, the right to free assembly, i.e. form assembly with others of like minds in any way you see fit. That's basically saying, no, screw that. You go to prison if you're not on our assembly. There's only one way here in this country. Damn.
Yeah, and obviously the reaction to Trump's speech there at the Conservative, what was it called?
Political Action Conference.
Was from well, you can imagine what the reaction to it was from CNN. There's a here's a title just from today. CNN analyst claims Trump's speech was like Hitler's. He's literally Hitler, and that ties in with the observer. I mean, here's an example of some nutbag on CNN saying that Trump's speech and some of the words he used make him literally Hitler, and that's okay. Maybe she's a bit off the wall. Some people maybe roll their eyes at CNN. Then you go to like we did earlier on. You go to the Guardian, a respected, intellectual newspaper from the UK. Hundreds of years old, and they're saying exactly the same thing, just in more flowery language. Just scroll down to the video there, Scotty. A bit more of that one right there. Will that play?
And also said this today. Listen, guys.
The men and women here today are on the front lines of protecting America's interest, defending America's value, and reclaiming our nation's priceless heritage. We have people in Congress, right now, we have people in Congress that hate our country. And you know that. And we can name every one of them if they want. They hate our country.
Sam, the idea of preserving heritage taps into historically darker times, certainly. Not only that, though, you say what we heard from the president in those remarks also could pose a national security concern.
Well, his statement makes me sick. On a personal level, preserving our heritage, reclaiming our heritage, that sounds a lot like a certain leader that killed members of my family and about 6 million other Jews in the 1940s. But on a national security level, the president talks about preserving our heritage as a catch-all for implementing policies that misallocate resources. He pretends that there are massive flows of illegal immigrants coming over our borders and is spending billions of dollars on a border wall emergency instead of paying attention to real national security threats. He sounds a lot like despotic leaders that have talked about white heritage and white nationalism around the world and is putting resources in the wrong place and pretending that there are foreign people trying to influence our country in a way that just isn't accurate.
Who does that speak?
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so the CNN host, stay on that one, Scotty, there, will you? Stay on that picture, on that article, because the problems obviously there was that, what he said was preserving our heritage, or reclaiming our heritage, and that is apparently something that Hitler said, except in German, so or something similar to that. I mean, obviously,
Ein Reich, ein Volk. Yes, it's very similar.
Well, obviously, Hitler said a lot of things, and you could probably, if you go through all of the text of Hitler's speeches, you could probably find a lot of Hitlers out there, right? Maybe
or a lot that you agree with as a progressive lefty.
Maybe, but as a lot of things that I'm saying right now, maybe Hitler said them at one time. He maybe used the words, I don't know. Any of the words that I've just spoken, he may have used them, and I could be literally Hitler as well now. But the funny thing is that just down below that, there's the exact same phrase, or at least reference to heritage, was used by Joe Biden. You can just play that. It's just a short one, I think.
It's time to stand up. It's time to fight back. It's time to reclaim our heritage, and it's time, and we are ready. We are looking for this fight. The future of our country depends on it.
Do it. Yeah,
There's
very good, Joe.
There's a lot more Hitler coming out of that.
It does sound a bit more Hitlerish, that one, when he used the term of reclaiming our heritage. So, Trump says reclaim our heritage, Hitler. Joe Biden says several years ago, reclaim our heritage, not Hitler. Crickets. So that's the level of discourse, and it's interesting there, just to beat up in the media a little bit more. CNN had that person on, and knowing what they were going to say, more or less, and actually encouraged her. The host of CNN there made it clear that before the girl, the guest who actually said he's more or less like he's literally Hitler, like he's pretty much the same person who killed 6 million Jews. She gave a preamble that made it clear that she knew that she was going to say that, talking about hark back to darker times. So CNN as you know, the reputable news organization that it is, deliberately and knowingly, and you know, produced and tabled a segment where they would pick a few words from Trump's speech, specifically with the words "reclaim our heritage" in it, and have someone come on and say that he's literally Hitler.
Yeah.
And then people wonder why there's memes like now today of where people get to, you know, ridicule other people by saying, you know, using the phrase literally Hitler.
Yeah.
Because it's so overused, you know, and there's the old there's some what is it about how arguments the
Godwins Law.
The Godwins Law, there you go. About the first person to use a reference to Hitler and the Nazis loses basically the argument. So yeah, that's the state of the media right now, and it's amazing that
in a sense the US is a dictatorship, but only insofar as everyone else who might otherwise be contenders has basically fled. They've vacated. Trump's left there standing, hello, anyone want to challenge me? Like, actually, properly? No.
Yeah. Yeah, so
I want to...
That's not good.
Quick on virtue signaling and mass hysteria in the United States. The Washington Post has corrected its erroneous coverage of the confrontation between the Covington Catholic schoolboys and the Native American activist Nathan Phillips at the Lincoln Memorial 2 months after publishing their misleading story that got that whole shtick rolling. Yeah, they've retracted it all right because they're facing a $250 million lawsuit, and also because they know they'd lose it, and so they've quietly said, yeah, no, the kid wasn't being a racist. We made it up, basically. And it's a kind of example. This kind of thing would really gripe on ordinary people, you know. But they think it's a winning strategy. They don't mind that the story dies six weeks later, because by then there's some other hysteria there flaming up, you know.
Mm. And well, the thing is that level of media hysteria and rhetoric, and not just from the media, but from a lot of people on Twitter and social media and stuff like that, and specifically around Trump, what people have to remember is that, you know, we're not necessarily defending Trump. The problem is that the discourse is being dominated by people who are using ridiculous and hysterical accusations that are fundamentally false against Trump, and we spend most of our time actually, you know, correcting or dealing with that ridiculous hysteria and lies, basically, because they dominate. If those people, if in another universe where Trump had been elected and nobody really had minded, the leftist or the media in general had not really cared so much about him and hadn't spent the past 2.5 years demonizing him and telling lies about him, we would have had a lot more time to critique Donald Trump and the policies of Donald Trump as far as they have played out over his presidency to date. But we don't really have time to do that, and it's not really, in a certain sense, we do that to some extent, but it's not really even appropriate for us to do it, because the greater and more egregious lies are all coming from the lefty establishment and the deep state against Trump. So, I mean, if we're going to deal with our primary focus is to combat lies and disinformation, and the vast majority of that is coming from the areas that it's coming from in the Washington establishment and in the lefty kind of media, so-called lefty media. It's coming from them. All of those lies and disinformation are coming from them towards Trump. So obviously, people could be mistaken for thinking that we actually support Trump. We think he's a great guy. We love him. It's not true. Just because we're pointing out all the lies that are directed towards him. If you would all shut up and stop spreading bullshit nonsense about him, then we might have some time to actually, or we'll have more time to critique his actual policies and what he's actually doing. You know, so
yeah. Instead, they drag everyone down into the gutter with them.
Right.
And like you said, Orange Man bad being ridiculous doesn't necessarily mean that Orange Man's savior.
Right, exactly.
The US has fundamental structural problems, economically, of course.
Right.
Politically, the divisiveness is dangerous. It still is a kind of a hot situation where people could take up arms. The very thing they're accusing, they're almost inadvertently baiting people, Americans, to come back at them and with weapons, because the overwhelming pressure is still on people to conform to that quote unquote hidden party line. When last week Trump made reference to it actually at this conference, and he brought the kid up on stage, a young student, a kind of conservative activist student at Berkeley or somewhere in California. He was attacked last week on campus filming or interviewing someone by a kind of crazed lefty, Greenberg, some American Jewish lefty, who was caught on camera punching him square in the face. Now, on another day, maybe the guy would have punched him back, but I suspect that for the most part, the overwhelming sense of impunity toward up to and including committing acts of violence lies with the minority anti-Trump side. That hasn't swung yet, but America still retains the potential to bring about the very worst horror that they're talking up all the time, baiting that majority into a violent reaction. Because,
but it'll be a while. I don't think I'm not necessarily sure that will happen, because in those kind of conflicts, it's the people in the majority are usually the ones who are defamed the most, if you know what I mean, and attacked the most by a small minority who feel kind of like they're cornered, and they're aware of their own, they're aware that they're in the minority and that they don't have a lot of chances. You know, they're running against the grain, basically. And that makes them all the more kind of vociferous and extremist.
They're feeling exposed. Until recent times, they did their work quietly in the shadows, but now they're out in front.
They're desperate, essentially, and when they're desperate, they scream and shout, and then the majority takes that as evidence that the majority is the majority, and that they really don't have anything to worry about. They just have to keep on going.
Right.
So it'll take a lot more. It would take the leftist kind of activists to really start to kind of dominate and control the situation and turn things around to their advantage for the majority to stand up and try and do something about it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'll have to see. That still could happen, I suppose, but the way things are going, you know? But I think it's more likely that America will descend into kind of some form of totalitarianism, but kind of soft totalitarianism where it's not overt. It's covert totalitarianism in the sense that, you know, if you look at social media and the way the censorship that's being imposed and...
you have infringed our community guidelines.
Right.
You mean you just censored me?
Right.
Thanks.
That kind of thing where people just go, well, you know, it's a free market. It just decided, so that's the way it should go, and companies should be allowed to decide what's on their platform and not. And a lot of stuff will pass, a lot of totalitarian stuff will pass under the guise of kind of human rights or minority rights, you know,
social justice.
Supposedly social justice or positive ideals, essentially. Stuff will pass then, and people will find themselves in a and it's kind of like the fabled kind of boiling frog, you know.
Right.
It happens slowly, and people then wake up almost like they wake up one day and they're already they're across the line type thing. There's not much they can do about it, you know. I think that's more likely than any kind of a major civil war. Unfortunately for Alex Jones, you know, I don't think 1776 is going to rise again, even if they take away your guns, which I don't think they're going to. So,
yeah, people would like a denouement. Can we get some closure on this?
Yeah.
But sadly, it's a...
Yeah, but speaking of being able to like critique Trump, one aspect would be, you know, Trump's foreign policy and what's going on with the US, with US foreign policy around the world and stuff. You know,
Right.
in terms of geopolitics, there was something this week that happened in Pakistan and India that there's more to it than meets the eye initially, with the nuclear standoff supposedly that was, you know, touted for maybe a day or something. Oh, these two nuclear powers.
People wonder why we don't worry much about the bomb. You know, to use the line from the movie. This story is a great indication of it. In itself, it was a remarkable incident because Kashmir hasn't flared like this, and thus India versus Pakistan, since 1971. That's remarkable. That's a half a century. Throughout all the years of the Muslim terror, global war on terror, there have been issues. Mumbai was a major terror attack, probably coming mostly through Pakistan, but there's also evidence of direct Western and other foreign intervention there in that one. But excluding that and a few other terror attacks in India, there's been no major major conventional war conflict between the two countries for half a century. And now it kicks off. What the hell?
Well, I suppose the kind of the geopolitics behind this is if you look at a map of Pakistan and this disputed area, which is disputed between Pakistan, India, and China. It's called Jammu and Kashmir, and then there's a few other names for the area, but it's basically to the north of India, to the north of Pakistan, and obviously to the east on the eastern border of China. India and Pakistan have been fighting over it for quite a long time. There's Pakistanis occupy some of it, India occupies some of it, and China occupies some of it. But it essentially directly relates to a broader scale geopolitical situation that we've talked about before in terms of, I suppose, China's initiative, One Belt, One Road, the Eurasian integration, and that kind of stuff. Because a big part of that initiative by China is something called the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which would run through this area that India and Pakistan and primarily are fighting over, as a way for China to build basically railroads from China through this area and then on into Pakistan proper and down to the Indian Ocean. And it's a way for China to circumvent the Malacca Straits, which is a well-known choke point that the US is well aware of, and even had war games with Australia several years ago, simulating the blockading of that Malacca Straits, which is down over
Singapore, Malaysia,
Indonesia, through which a lot of Chinese goods obviously coming to the west, everything west of China.
90% of it,
all coming through those straits, and the US had simulated blockading it in naval war games, essentially. So it's kind of up there for the Chinese as a way, as something that they need to be able to circumvent. And one way, the obvious way to circumvent it, is a land corridor from China directly, like I said, through this conflict area down into the coast of Pakistan into the Indian Ocean, basically right there beside the Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf. And that's obviously, incidentally, that's one of the reasons why the main reason why Afghanistan was invaded and occupied immediately after 9/11 by the US, because Afghanistan is right to the north of Pakistan and was seen as a central, strategically very important country in that gap, essentially, between China and more or less the Middle East and then the West, so the US wanted to have a strong foothold there. That's why they've never left, because they wanted a presence right there in a very strategic area that will be extremely important for any future development of Eurasia, or the growth of Eurasia and its potential supplanting, I suppose, of the West in the global economic order. So, but unsurprisingly, just in terms of the background of the supposed shoot down of the bombings, the attacks by the Indians against the Pakistanis, and then the Pakistanis supposedly retaliating and stuff, that came on the heels of a bombing attack a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
In the same disputed area, where one guy carried out a suicide bombing attack in a car against Indian military personnel in a convoy of buses and killed 45 of them. And the Indians blamed the Pakistanis for that. It's basically said it was state funded. There's no real evidence that it was state funded, but although at least not by Pakistan, because this particular terror group, Jaish al-Islam, not Jaish al-Islam.
I think the initial of JEM. Jaish-e-Mohammed, not Jaish al-Islam. Jaish-e-Mohammed is the name of it. It's been around, but it's directly linked to the Saudis, a Sunni kind of terror group, basically, and is well known, going back quite a long time, to having connections to the Saudis. And the Saudis, obviously, are the primary funder of Islamic terrorism in the world and have been for quite a long time. So this group, so you have a link there into Saudi Arabia. And when you got a link to Saudi Arabian terrorism, you usually have a link to Israel, because Israelis at this point are hand
hand in hand with the Saudis. They've basically teamed up with the Saudis, bizarrely, in the Middle East, and to control the Middle East, specifically keeping Iran back, because both Israel and Saudi Arabia have a mutual interest in keeping Iran from developing in the Middle East. And Israel's direct, at least the direct connection between Israel and this attack was that the Israelis have been, or I think they're the primary weapon supplier, at least last year, for India. That's something like $700 million arms deal to India in 2018. And the missiles used by the Indians to fire against in the response to their attack on Pakistan were Israeli. They basically came out publicly saying that they had used Israeli missiles to shoot at Pakistan. So that's all. That situation has broad geopolitical implications. It can't be divorced from what I just said, like the whole Chinese initiative for the kind of one belt, one road, and specifically the China-Pakistan economic corridor that would pass through this conflict zone. And it's an attempt by, I suppose, these Western powers, and you have to include the US. So US, Israel, Saudi Arabia, in one way or another, had a hand in this conflict with the Indians. In fact, the Indian government has more or less thrown its lot in with the Western order and against the Chinese initiative for kind of Eurasian integration, at least so far. They're on the Western side, essentially. So, but I'd say it was essentially a provocation with the connivance of the Indians, but maybe not with their complete awareness, but the actual terror attack being facilitated by the Saudi monarchy. Obviously, a guy. Terrorists can't just, in somewhere like in this conflict zone of Jammu and Kashmir.
It's very highly controlled by militaries on both
sides.
Right,
all three, China, Pakistan, and India. So how do you get a guy in there with 100 kilos of explosives in a car, and be able to approach, have the logistics and the intelligence and all that kind of stuff to approach an Indian convoy of buses carrying paramilitary or military personnel and stuff. All terrorists have some state financing, directly or indirectly. So, it was essentially a provocation to destabilize that region and to, in that way, keep it destabilized so it thwarts, because the Chinese need peace across that entire region to facilitate their economic corridor, basically, and the building of railways and roads and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. So if it's a hotbed of suicide bombing attacks and then Pakistan and India militaries kind of having a go at each other, it's not exactly ideal for the Chinese and for the idea of their project of Eurasian integration. And the people obviously who are against that would be primarily the US and the Western world order in connivance with their friends in Israel and Saudi Arabia.
Busted wide open.
More or less. That's
more or less. The Indian Prime Minister kind of taking a break from the conventional, screw you, it's your fault, we hate you. They broke away from that completely when he made a statement on Thursday. This is the quote: "The enemy tries to destabilize us, carries out terror attacks. They want to stop our growth. We Indians are standing like a rock to counter their evil designs." Stop our growth. That doesn't sound. That's economic growth. Do you mean, because you've got to think about that? Okay, so this terrorist outfit JEM in Pakistan, they insinuate in other statements they make, with the backing of Islamabad, so the Pakistani government, did that to stop us from growing. But that doesn't make sense, because why would you blow up your neighbor to stop them growing when it's going to obviously impact you with a repercussion? Mm-hmm. So that kind of hangs in the air. They want to stop our growth. Their evil designs. I'm pretty sure he's speaking to something else going on along the lines of what you just described.
Maybe
an intrigue that's more complex than Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And look how quickly they made peace with each other.
Right. Well, they don't want to die in a nuclear conflagration, So.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to happen anyway. But there's a threat of it. It's mutually assured destruction, which same reason there's going to be no hot war between America, or nuclear war between America and the US, or anybody else really. America and Russia.
There are a couple of other... Pakistan has a terrorism problem because they have with the blessing over the decades of the Saudis and the British, and then the Americans, I suppose later after the beginning of the Soviet trying to kick the Soviets out in Afghanistan. Pakistan was basically trained to go and use terror as government policy, and it's been so normal for them. It's like, what's everyone getting upset about? That's just what we've been doing for a century. Yeah, okay, we speak the right language publicly, but everyone knows we use terror. So they do objectively have a terror problem. It's partly insofar as they themselves are using it, and also because they don't have full control over this.
Right.
The former British diplomat Alistair Crook, he's writing now full time. He got some really interesting analysis and stuff. He suggests that what's going on here is that Pakistan, kind of in quotes, as in a kind of the establishment, ISI, the one that was closest to the CIA for decades, so not necessarily the Khan government in Pakistan, has been emboldened by favoritism. Now, this is kind of jarring because a year or two ago, Trump said Pakistan's evil and withheld, I think, for 1 year or two, the military aid payments that are normally made to Pakistan.
So that's because it was currying favor with Russia, basically, and Iran. It was and China even. It was looking east and north essentially instead of like this.
Crook suggests that despite Trump White House signaling that, in the background, actually, your deep state or Pentagon, Israel firsters were actually signaling to Pakistan, don't worry, we're very much going to need you because we're all about getting Iran.
Right.
But that itself is all about maintaining a foothold in Eurasia to thwart Russian-Chinese integration of the region. He brings in, you remember there was another bombing recently across the border in Pakistan. That was in the Baluchistan province. That's a hotbed because it borders Pakistan and Iran, right? Iranian troops were killed in a parade. I think there are 27 members killed. That was on February 13th, suicide attacker. Suicide. An explosive-laden vehicle was rammed into a bus carrying Iranian troops. Very bloody, similar to what happened. That was February 13th.
Right.
Now, Iran went ballistic publicly in statements and said this was planned and carried out from inside Pakistan.
Right.
At the same time, they have good relations with Pakistan. So, damn you, you bastards. We know this came from your territory. But, Khan government, it's okay. But we know you don't have exactly a whole control on this situation. He goes on to say that U.S. this is Crook speaking, U.S. Special Forces, he's heard, I'm not sure from where, but that the ones that are being drawn down from Syria are redeploying to the new Iraqi hub, which Trump did publicly declare in northern Iraq. Trump said, he gave it away, to watch Iran. That's kind of lets the cat out of the bag that, okay, well, Syria, right, we'll leave a little bit of a foothold, but actually we want to redirect. So that's coming at Iran from the west. And on the other side, the big strategic issue apparently in the Pentagon at the moment is how to maintain in perpetuity a presence in Afghanistan. Not necessarily in Pakistan directly, but Afghanistan, they want a base. It's not even that they want a hard base. They know that things are changing and constantly fluid. They want situations where, there's been another flare-up of this terrorist problem now in this country. We can help you with that. It's basically they're selling their service. They're trying to wing it by they're selling the services of, look, you don't want a war between you and your neighbor, so you've got a terrorist problem. It's basically like this is the Americans trying to sell their version of terror Roundup. You know, Monsanto's Roundup. We have the product for you. It's terror Roundup. You just need our money and our special forces. Ideally a permanent base in your country, but we understand if that's a bit too much, but we'd like kind of temporary lily pads, they're called, where we have the rights to fly in and out of here, here, and here. And in a way, it's their counter proposal to what the Russians and Chinese are saying, which is, how about you make serious, actual peace, genuinely clear out the terrorists and start building motorways and waterworks and cities?
Yeah, but
the Americans saying, nah, you don't want that product. You want this one. This is much better.
I mean, I talked about the China-Pakistan economic corridor that runs through this area. It would, initially the plan is obviously it would go to a railway that would go to the sea, the Gulf, essentially the Indian Ocean, the Gulf of Oman and near the Persian Gulf there, in Pakistan. This would for Chinese products, obviously, coming from China to there and then on the boats, but it would also, by implication, be the first stage in possibly more railways through Iran, through Iraq, through Syria, and over to Europe. And not only that, but it would also potentially link up China directly to Iranian land-based oil supplies, which again would circumvent the Malacca Straits, because a lot of oil that, and China needs a lot of oil, comes by sea from the Middle East.
Right.
But this would, if the Chinese were able to get kind of infrastructure down through Pakistan, then they're right there at the Iranian border, and it wouldn't be too hard to
cutting through Central Asia to
hook up
the Middle East.
Yeah, hook up China to Iranian oil directly, and that would be a boon for Iran, obviously, and that's a red flag for the Israelis as well. So basically, the Israelis, and obviously for the Saudis, because Iran threatens to supplant Saudi Arabia, and if Saudi Arabia is supplanted, then America is in trouble as well. So these three countries, US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, are all dead set against, or want to do whatever they can to stop this project, this Chinese project, to hook China up through Pakistan up to Iran, effectively. It's an existential crisis for the three of them, basically. So, and the Israelis have been trying to. Obviously, there's a religious aspect to this as well, in the sense that the Pakistanis are primarily Muslim, and the Indians are primarily Hindu. And there's obviously has been a long-standing issue in India, between India and Pakistan, on religious grounds. That's why they basically split when they used to be just the Indian subcontinent under the British Raj, or the British Empire. Was split off in about 1950 or so into Pakistan and India. But in India, there's still about, even though it's got a population of 1.2 billion, there's about 180 or 200 million Muslims still in India, and they're not. There's a they don't get on very well. Let's say there's a religious divide in India between their very small minority, still 200 million people, small minority of Muslims versus the Hindus, and of course the Israelis would find common cause with the Indians in saying those dirty Muslims, right? You and I have. We know what the problem is here, right? It's the Muzzies, right? You have a Muzzy problem, and so do we. Israel have a Muzzy problem called the Palestinians and the Syrians and the Iraqis and the Lebanese and everybody else. So that's a common cause essentially, but ultimately. It's not good for India anyway. I don't really understand why India seems to have been balking, even though they're a member of BRICS and stuff. They still seem to be dithering essentially on whether or not to go full Eurasian integration type of thing. Because
they're antsy about China's. China has a head start on them. India is going to be next, like the next generation, in theory. If
India
things
thinks
last
they can pull their own weight type thing.
Oh yeah, well, why wouldn't they? They have almost the same
freaking
size population.
Right. So they think they can hold their own, essentially, or go their own.
And they're currently led by a nationalist leader, which is unusual, and they're Hindu nationalists, so they have they would see eye to eye. But I think they're also, India's old.
Right.
They know Israel's I think they're playing a game like.
Well, they are, but and they're also being made. They're open for offers. I think is the thing. They realize their economic potential with the size of the population and the resources they have, and so they're almost playing both sides against each other in a certain sense. Certainly, they're being made offers by the Americans and by the Israelis. I mean, I mentioned earlier on that the Israelis are India's major number one. Arms.
Are they number one?
For India, yeah.
Right, wow.
In the last year.
That's a flip,
in the
because
last year.
India would have been traditionally... would have been pro-Soviet, anti-Zionist, but they've taken a different tack.
Well, they're again,
as
as evidence of them kind of playing both sides, batting for both teams. They just opened a massive AK-47 manufacturing company or plant in India to manufacture AK-47s under license, obviously, from the Russian manufacturer. So yeah, it's just
another piece of data. Modi is up for re-election this year.
Right. Well, this
is a nice little nationalist country. He's doing the MAGA thing.
Yeah, it didn't really go very well though for him because it looks like India got his plane shot down. You know what I mean? And still he probably tried to salvage something out of it, and there was a lot of media hype, and all the media was really used to whip the population up into a bit of jingoism, and there was a big fanfare and welcome of the pilot who was captured by the Pakistani army when he was released, to welcome him back home, and all these little kids with whatever they call it, the moustache, the handlebar moustache on and stuff. So yeah, they did everything they possibly could to get Modi did everything he possibly could to get as much
nationalism out of it,
and as much electioneering out of it, essentially. So there is that cynical aspect to it as well, that they're not really serious about fighting with each other, but Modi's up for re-election, so I got to fire off a few missiles.
It's not the first time, though, that they've done what quote-unquote surgical operations.
Right.
They have actually crossed into Pakistan once before under Modi. They claim, this is the thing, you see, India has claimed they bombed a terrorist base inside Pakistan, or Pakistani-controlled Kashmir. The Pakistanis showed photos of, no, they just hit a few trees. And actually, they made it very funny. They're going to... they're going to lodge a petition somewhere at the UN, I'm not sure, against India for eco-crimes, for blowing up ancient pine trees. So the Pakistanis they're being very coy, but so the Indians are claiming, they had previously, a couple of years ago, hit a terrorist base. They also, this time, hit a terrorist base, and it was a response to... But no one will know, because no one's going to admit. The Pakistanis they're going to say phase 2 for the cause of nationalism. And so the Indians claim whatever they want. But objectively, just at the level of terrorism, truth, so to speak, in this situation is on India's side. Pakistan is a hotbed of terrorism.
Yeah, well, they need to do something about it, but I don't think it's the Pakistani government that's involved in it. Like I said, it's the Saudis and the Israelis.
And all the Americans.
And the Americans, who are behind a lot of Islamic terrorism as a destabilizing factor.
But it's always been the case, isn't it? Pakistan should... I better be careful what I say. I was going to say it should never have existed, but it exists. I accept Pakistan exists. I'm not saying it shouldn't exist now. But it was like the original Islamic State.
Right.
Like the capital they call Islamabad. You're calling it, I'm going to call this capital Christian city. I mean, it's just like, it was created to give the Muslims of the sub-Indian continent their rightful heritage. But then 200 million Muslims remained in India, but it was a crazy situation, and it's no surprise that it's a major fracture point 60 years later. The long game still says peace wins, development wins. But we know how easy it is to destroy things with conventional warfare. Not likely directly between each other. But just, name some other incidents in recent times in Iraq and Libya. It's always a threat, that the next country will be flattened. It's so much easier to destroy than it is to build, and that's the kind of the hold that the Western system has over the more peaceful overtures of, we built you hospital, you just stop shooting. Yes, deal. It sounds so much more attractive on paper, but the reality of day to day. Yeah, but he has weapons and he has terrorist bases.
He can burn it down or blow it up.
It's so
walk away.
Easily provoked.
Yeah. One last piece of news, very important news. Scotty mentioned earlier on before the show started that Alex Jones, our favourite anti-globalist, was on the, what's his face?
Joe Rogan's show.
Joe Rogan show. So tell us about that, Scotty.
He's on the Joe Rogan show. It's about 4 hours long.
Wow.
More than 4 hours.
4 hours of Alex Jones? Jesus
and
Christ.
He went a little bit crazy. Like, he started screaming, doing his Alex Jones things, and, he said, when they brought the Germans, or no, what was it? Oh, it was NASA. Yeah, it was NASA. It was like, NASA brought the Germans over, and they're ruling the world, and they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. And then, like, Joe Rogan is like, because Alex Jones can't be on any show, right? I mean, I have a little, my little YouTube channel, techie stuff, Scotty's Tech.info, and I post a video, and I just included the name Alex Jones in the description. I didn't even say his name in the video, I don't think. And they immediately demonetize it, and, it didn't get banned or anything. But the guy has no access to anything, so somehow he ends up on Joe Rogan's show for over 4 hours, full ads, 6 million views or something, Neil was saying.
I think it's 7 something now.
7 million. And he basically ranted, and then, like, Joe Rogan would try to bring him back and say, like, so, okay, but what about Sandy Hook? Are you saying that you really didn't mean this and that and the other thing? And then Alex said, no, I didn't mean that. I was like, I just blah, 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 blah. And then there was some other guy on there who I don't know, and then he would ask questions, and then Alex Jones would go off again, and I only watched like 15 minutes of it because that's all I could stand.
I saw a little excerpt from it on again, it's just I don't know if this was 4 hours was Alex Jones ranting basically, but it wouldn't be surprising if he was, but certainly he was ranting in this little short excerpt, and he was saying that he was screaming about he actually stood up and he was threatening to kind of like hurt the other person who apparently one of the other guests who was like disagreeing with him. I'll hurt you and stuff. If it
was Joe Rogan's MMA buddy.
Yeah, he was saying he was going to hurt him and stuff because he's screaming that they're killing newborn babies. They're killing them. It's killing the newborn babies. And he's screaming that over and over again. And it's hard to make out a lot of what he said, but that was his point over and over again. They were killing newborn babies. And I just heard Joe Rogan halfway through the rant saying, yeah, that's a conspiracy theory. So Joe Rogan was obviously like trying to just provoke him and troll him a little bit, But yeah, I'm sure I won't be able to watch all 4 hours of it, but I might check out a little bit of it just for a laugh, basically, and see what they're talking about. But yeah, Alex Jones. It obviously his ban from YouTube hasn't changed, and Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else hasn't quelled his thirst for the rant, and for the globalists, for getting the globalists. Yeah,
he's not wrong about a lot of stuff, but yeah, he's just a bit crazy.
Well, the thing, he just takes a bit far. The thing about, I mean, I looked into it at the time, and I mean, it is a bit freaky that. I think this was in New York State basically passed new legislation allowing for late-term abortions, and by late-term abortions they mean right up until delivery, basically, until so that in that situation a full-term baby would be born and then just kind of left to die because the mother wanted an abortion,
or snipped like they exposed in the Gosnell story. That was horrific.
Right.
There's a guy doing late-term abortions caught hundreds, probably thousands, I don't know.
Yeah.
Somewhere in St. Louis or something.
Yeah.
And his thing was he would take the baby out and he snipped the back of the neck. It would be alive and screaming and stuff, but he would basically not decapitate it, but
snip the spinal cord basically. Yeah, it's pretty grim. Like, and there's more and more states I think are going that direction. And there was a couple of people on YouTube called up some abortion clinics and stuff, asking about, because one of the detail that people would argue about this claim about full term abortions is that it's only under special circumstances, where there's danger to the life of the mother, or if the baby is like basically non-viable, or is has in some way, just maybe severely handicapped or something like that. But then a few people on YouTube called up abortion clinics in the state of New York asking about this, and it seemed that it was, it was a girl actually who just was talking to the receptionist or talking to the person, I don't know if it was a doctor or whoever she was talking to in the clinic, about whether or not she could have a full term, more or less full term. She said, I'm more or less 9 months pregnant now. She wasn't, but she was pretending that she was, and asking about the options for her being able to abort her baby at 9 months. And while the woman on the phone in the abortion clinic she can't seem to be giving lip service to the idea that you would have to get a medical doctor's certificate, or you'd have to go and see a doctor first and make sure that that either you are ill in some way or other, there's a danger to you, or there's a danger, or the baby has issues, whatever. And she said, well, what if I was, I'm feeling a bit depressed. So would that be sufficient?
I don't feel like it.
And she's more or less like, I'm just feeling a bit depressed, and so I want an abortion. And the woman in the abortion clinic said, well, we'll have to see about that. She was really very blah, blah. She was just trying to get through. Okay, we'll see.
Convince me.
Or okay, we'll talk about that. But the most important thing was that it was going to be $17,000.
Right.
So there's the problem right there, is when for literally a 5-minute, or functionally a 5-minute abortion, or very short, very, very, very little work, let's say, very little expense on the part of abortion clinics, they can make large amounts of money. Then there's obviously the danger of them circumventing supposedly the blocks that are put in for abusing the system, and effectively women going in just not feeling like they want to have the baby at 9 months, and then having it effectively having the birth happen. It's not that they're being, at 9 months, I don't know why I'm going on about this, but at 9 months you don't have an abortion. You give birth.
Yeah.
And then they kill the baby.
Or you give it up for adoption, for Christ's
No,
sake.
they just kill it.
Right.
A perfectly healthy baby. So, it gets to the point where, I never really had much problem with accepting the idea of abortion and women's rights to have an abortion. But it seems that idea, that concept is being pushed to a point where I think it may get pushed to the point where a lot more people who otherwise would have had no problem with abortions will suddenly start to say, well, maybe that's going a bit far, when you're actually giving birth to a perfectly healthy, full-term baby and then just killing it because the mother doesn't want it. Is that okay? I don't know. These are suddenly the questions that previous were more or less black and white are no longer black and white. That's the thing.
Yeah. In the US, like you just said, if the price is right.
If the price is right, you can get whatever you want, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's capitalism for you, baby. That's how it works. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there for this week, folks. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you like the video, subscribe, click on the notification bell. We'll be back next week with another show. Until then, have a good one.
Thanks for listening and watching. Bye-bye.